Hello and welcome, I'm Abrax and this is a lot of damage. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down a hard-hitting off-meta rifle build that I've been having a blast with in Tom Clancy's The Division 2. But before I break down the build, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more content. And a big thank you to my supporters over on Patreon. More on how you can support at the end of the video. Now, let's get into the build. This build focuses on big headshot crits that will stop nearly any NPC in their tracks, which means it is primarily focused around the Diamondback rifle. Originally, I started putting this build together when we saw the Chill Out gear mask enter the game. If you're not familiar with the mask, it was added as part of the 2021 winter event, with its unique claim to fame being that it only came with one attribute, but 2 mod slots, which made it a great mask for stacking a single attribute. Like most, I understood that this would not be a best in slot mask, but it would definitely have a place in more specialized builds, so I started playing around with a few. And if you've ever seen any of my build videos before, you know I always like to offer alternative pieces, especially with this mask no longer being available. After a bit of testing, I actually ditched the mask altogether for a different piece, when I managed to get an overall higher damage per shot. I'm sure we'll find a use for this mask at some point, but this build is not it. In this video, I'll be breaking the build down into the gear, weapons, skills, specialization, and of course, going over how I play this build in order to help you get the most out of it. And I often find the best place to start is with the gear. For the mask, I'm using a Walker and Harris mask with weapon damage in the core attribute, crit damage and headshot damage in the minor attributes, and more crit damage in the mod slot. Like I said, originally I wanted to get the Chill Out mask in here with its ability to stack crit damage, but during my testing, the Walker and Harris just gave more damage per shot, so back in the stash the Chill Out mask went. For the chest, I'm using a Providence Defense chest piece, which gives us the one-piece brand bonus of 15% headshot damage. I have weapon damage in the core attribute and crit damage and headshot damage in the minor, with more crit damage in the mod slot. For the talent, I'm using Headhunter. Your next weapon hit within 30 seconds deals an additional 125% of that killing blow's damage. Damage is capped at 800% of your weapon's damage. This is raised to 1250% if your headshot damage is greater than 150%, which, with this build, it is. Headhunter is a huge damage buff for any single shot weapon, especially if you can keep maintaining headshots. In the holster slot, I'm using a Grupo holster for the extra 15% crit damage from the one-piece brand bonus. And in the core attribute, I have weapon damage with crit damage and headshot damage as the minor attributes. For the backpack, I'm using one of the best backpacks for most damage builds, which is the named Providence backpack, the Gift. This gives us the 2-piece brand set bonus of 10% crit chance, which is a nice to have, but not fully needed. For this build, we really want to stack as much crit damage as possible, so getting the 2-piece will eventually let us get to the 3-piece brand bonus. For the core attribute, I have weapon damage with more crit damage and headshot damage in the minor attributes, and in the mod slot, a little bit more crit damage. For the talent, the Gift has Perfect Vigilance. Increase total weapon damage by 25%, taking damage disables this buff for 3 seconds. This is a very hard-hitting talent and a go-to for a lot of my damage builds. If you want your very own Gift backpack, you can farm them in the Dark Zone, or if you wouldn't touch the DZ with a 10-foot pole, you can also get lucky and get them from the named item caches. Using a normal Providence backpack with the standard version of Vigilance is by no means a build breaker, with the only real difference being the downtime. That's 3 seconds for the perfect version and only 4 seconds for the standard, so it's not a huge difference. The gloves are a pair of Providence gloves, giving us that 3rd brand set bonus of 15% crit damage. I have weapon damage as the core and crit damage and headshot damage as the minor attributes. And finally, for the knee pads, I'm using the good old Fox's Prayer named Overlord knee pads. These knee pads tick 2 boxes for this build. First, we get the 1-piece brand set bonus of 10% rifle damage, which comes in handy with our primary weapon being a rifle. For the attributes, I have weapon damage as the core, crit damage as the only minor, and for its unique attribute, the Fox's Prayer knee pads come with 8% damage to targets out of cover, which is a very strong damage attribute. Now onto the weapons, and for this build of course we are using the exotic rifle Diamondback for our primary. The Diamondback is an exotic version of the 1886 rifle, a single shot rifle with a low magazine capacity and a high damage per shot, and for some unknown reason a snake hanging off it. I'm not kidding, this is a great exotic for damage, but it just looks so odd. Diamondback comes with 329.1k base damage, 754.9k with this build, an RPM of 100 and a magazine size of 5 rounds. Being a rifle, it comes with rifle damage and crit hit damage fixed, and headshot damage being the fixed third attribute, with exotics having fixed attributes. For the talent, the Diamondback has Agonizing Bite. Diamondback randomly marks an enemy. Hitting that enemy consumes the mark, guaranteeing a critical hit with damage amplified by 25%. After hitting a mark, all shots fired are guaranteed critical hits for 5 seconds. A new random enemy is marked afterward, and whenever you reload. This talent, along with the chest talent Headhunter, are the backbone of this build. By stacking as much crit hit damage as possible without having to worry about stacking crit chance, and stacking headshot damage wherever we can't roll crit damage, we take full advantage of the 100% crit chance from Agonizing Bite, combined with the fully maxed out Headhunter, with all of the damage we can squeeze out of both. For the secondary weapon, you have a few options. For maximum damage from this build, another rifle would be the way to go, something like the classic M1A or the MK17, but this means your primary and secondary weapons are both pulling from the same ammo resource. Because of this, I've decided to go for an assault rifle for my secondary, more specifically a police M4 with assault rifle damage, health damage, and damage to targets out of cover, with ranger as the talent for a little bit more damage. But you can go for any weapon of your choice here, with the Diamondback being the star of the show for this build. With this build, I don't really use the pistol too much, but I always take something with the finisher talent, just in case you get a chance to take out an enemy with low health and get a bit of a boost to your crit damage. And more crit damage is always a good thing. For the skills, I'm using a pretty default DPS combo of the Crusader Shield with the Revive Hive. At this point, I feel I can almost hear the combined groan of everyone whenever I mention the Crusader Shield, but it's still one of the best skills to go to for damage builds, giving you a touch more survivability and allowing you to keep vigilance up for longer. And the Revive Hive is always just a go-to whenever I don't have a plan for the second skill slot, because you never know. With the build being rifle-centric, we are of course going with Sharpshooter for the specialization, with our damage rolled to rifle, pistol, and whatever secondary you choose, which for me is assault rifle damage. Using Sharpshooter gives the build an extra 15% headshot damage with the Diamondback, 15% stability which will help out with Headhunter, extra armor and ammo regen while in cover, and my favourite grenade in the game, the Flashbang. Before I run over the attributes for this build, I do always like to say I am over SHD level 1000, so I have all of the additional attributes that come with it. If you're not yet over SHD 1000, your end attributes will be different. Looking over the attributes with the Diamondback in hand, I have 20% crit chance, 213% crit damage, which will be 215 fully optimized, 163.8% headshot damage, which will come to 170 fully optimized, 99.6% all weapon damage, and 39.8% rifle damage. Now these are some good numbers, but how does the build actually play? Body shot damage with this build is nothing to scoff at, but obviously this build relies on accuracy. To get the most out of this build, you want to make sure you're hitting as many headshots as possible to keep Headhunter fully buffed. And make sure you're either keeping out of harm's way or using the Crusader Shield to keep vigilance up. This will help you keep the build's damage through the encounters. Now it's time to make sure you're prioritizing your targets marked by the Diamondback to take advantage of that 100% crit chance, and really make use of that 200 plus crit damage. Remembering if your marked target is too out of the way or impossible to get to, all you have to do is reload your weapon to switch targets. And that is the build. Thanks for watching. If you're going to give this build a go, let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, giving it a like helps others find it, and don't forget to subscribe for future content. As always, a big thank you to my supporters over on Patreon, and if you would like to join them, you can support the channel for as little as £1 a month. You'll find the link for that in the description below. Have a great day, and I will catch you in the next one.